supposed to have.
Hey, sweetie, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Good morning.
Uh,
Look, I think it's coming on. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna give my head back.
Your face has a twist issue this morning, young lady? I'm gonna give it to you right there. Excuse me. 6, 7, 8. Oh.
good morning to everyone I haven't spoken to,
Good morning.
Good morning.
except Elvin.
You sat near her and she moved. You
Yeah,
noticed that,
that's
right?
why I'm not gonna speak to her.
Miss Barbara, is this your water or Mr.
It's not my move.
Why are you spawning me?
Pastor, you're not gonna review what you did last time?
Oh yeah, well, I did that. You're welcome.
Are there any questions from last week?
Oh, I talked about last week, are we recording?
Yes.
Oh, I talked about, Yeshua and how we are, the deliverers, huh?
You need to move up on the chair.
Want you? Okay. Is that better?
No, still can't see you.
Seeing me is not important. See, Barbara? I actually talked about, being, Yeshua, that we are the same as Jesus, is and was in the earth, based upon being able to do what he did, as he said, and based upon, what Yeshua means. It's one thing to be Elohim, but there is no indication in the scriptures that Elohim does any delivering, which is an aspect of himself. However, when just to say the name Yeshua, you're talking about the deliverance of Yahweh, and there's every indication that it's necessary to recognize that we are Yahweh, and the portions of scripture that's indicative to that. If we look at the name Yahweh, Yeshua, it is a contraction of two words, Yahweh who delivers. And if you look at the actions of deliverance, we will see that there was a difference between Moses and Joshua. Joshua is Yeshua also. And the difference is that Moses led them out, and his name Moshe means to come out of, and Yeshua means Yahweh who delivers, and Joshua is the one who took them from the wilderness, which is a place of either a place of confusion, but also a place of learned insight, or a place where where enlightenment is received. And he carried them from that place into the land of promise, which is the place where you become one with the Creator. And that in itself shows us that it is necessary. If we look at Moses being Elohim, it actually frees us from believing that we are only human. And if you look at Joshua as being the deliverer, it shows us what happens when we embrace the divinity that we have been created to be. So, any questions about that? I think that's where we ended.
Yeah, because you had said a lot last week.
Okay.
But yeah. That's
So,
okay. I was trying to find where Revelations where the stones came from.
21st.
So it's 21, yeah.
21st chapter.
Okay. There are a lot of 12s in this section of Revelations. 12 as it relates to the gates, 12 as it relates to the stones, 12 as it relates to what was on the breastplate of the priest, 12 as it relates to the the stones in the foundation, the 12 foundations of the city of Jerusalem, or righteousness. And so there are several different renditions of what these things mean depending on where you look at it. Most of them come out of the names, in a sense, of the 12 disciples. I'm sorry, 12. There were 12 disciples also, but the 12 tribes. So I think, Pastor, a lot of it's going to go back to the 12 tribes, and at some point in time we might need to revisit that.
I think you're right.
I did just a cursory of the 12 tribes when I was trying to look at the relationship of the gates themselves. The 12 tribes, if you will remember, were Zebulun, Gad, Benjamin, Simeon, Issachar, Naphtali, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Reuben. Then you remember Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim became 2 because they were adopted by their grandfather. And in some renditions, they continue to say tribe of Joseph.
Yeah.
So a lot of each of those tribes have a particular jewel attached to them too. And the definition of those jewels might change just slightly across whatever site you look at, or whatever verse you look at, and how it's interpreted. But anyway, the first precious stone that they talked about was that of jasper.
21.
And jasper is sort of a quartz stone, just to give you an overview. It's opaque. There are different varieties. It can be yellow, it can be red, it can be brown or green, and it breaks with a smooth surface. The spiritual underpinning that some sources talk about is that of physical strength, that of energy, that it's a stone of health, it's a stone of passion, it brings courage in the face of unpleasant kinds of tasks. So it's a stone that kind of justifies unjust situations. I'm sorry, rectifies it, corrects unjust situations. So all of that is just an example of all of the adjectives attached to that particular stone.
You gonna type all this up?
I'm sorry?
You gonna type all this up?
Type it up for what?
Distribute.
Oh.
That's your sister.
Take notes like I do.
I know, right?
The biblical meaning of the name Jasper is, in Hebrew, is jewel. There are healing properties attached to jasper as well, because jaspers, I don't know if any of you know it, but there are folk who really are in some of the new age kinds of stores, etc. They have these stones and they sell them because of these purported properties. And basically, I believe that there are spiritual properties attached to them, just like there are spiritual properties attached to just about anything that's created. Everything has an energy. It has a resonance. if that resonates with you, has a resonance all its own. And so I do believe that there are some things that can resonate at the level that we need them to resonate. For instance, if there's a something in our bodies that requires healing, different organs have their own pitches in terms of resonance. And there have been some things that I've read that relate to, if you align an energy source with that resonance, it sort of puts it in sync again. It kind of balances it out, especially if it's not resonating as it ordinarily would, because it's been there's some invasive kinds of cells that have come and thrown them off balance. Things like that is really, really intriguing, and bears a lot of digging, because that's just the surface. But anyway, jasper's one of those stones. Physical strength again, energy, in stamina, endurance. And it increases the amount of what did I say? The chi, the life force. And again, it's a stone of health and passion, brings courage, etc., etc. So that's one of the foundations. And probably we can relate them as I go and do several more, and then you'll ask them. What's the question I have is, okay, why all these foundations? Why these different foundations?
Yeah.
And so I think our answer will reveal itself as we look at this. Because if you remember, different kinds of people, just reflect characteristics of spiritual energy in a sense. Well, these stones sort of reflect the same thing, characteristics of various spiritual energies. And so it's not like it was a real, that the city had really 12 foundations per se. But if you look at it spiritually, the definition of all of these gems relate to a spiritual principle that will reveal itself.
Should I ask this question later? I mean,
You can ask all you want.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I should ask it now or later, but aren't they an extension of what we are or who we are? Those stones?
That's what I mean about the energy and the principle itself, because it reveals something about, just like the rivers that are talked about in the Garden of Eden reveal something about the various countries and nations are made up by individuals, people. So yes.
What were said up again about rivers again?
Like the rivers in the Garden of Eden, and they flowed out. They relate to attitudes or characteristics of nations, and nations are made up of people, etc.
But that was a mix with some.
Pastor, you want to say something?
Yeah, the actual energy of the stones comes from the Creator, the one who creates it. It carries His energy. And where did He create it? Where did it come from? Elohim. So if you're the image of Elohim, it carries that energy that emanates from you. So it's not the stone that has a greater energy than you, but it's the stone that influences the energy for humans. Example, if you recognize who you are, you don't need the energy from the stone. If you don't, then the stone is there. But only someone who recognizes that can offer it. It's like healing yourself. If I can stop my head from hurting, I don't need Tylenol. But if you can't, you need Tylenol.
So really, the stone also is symbolic of who we are and what we are able to do. One of the things, the healing properties of this stone, courage and wisdom, but it also carries strong connections to the energy of the earth. And so it makes the healing properties beneficial for lack of a better word, for grounding us, um, for stabilizing us, for balancing us, for strength, that kind of thing. Where's you had a question?
No.
Okay, all right. Any questions about that? There's much more to that. And so I guess what we're doing is a overview initially, and then you guys are gonna go back and think and study it up and think of questions, right? Okay. Sapphire is the next foundation we're gonna talk about. Sapphire is a very valuable and precious, basically bluestone, and it comes from the Greek word sapphirus, meaning blue color. It's one of 4 precious gemstones that include diamond, it includes ruby, it includes emerald, I believe.
Yellow or pink too.
Hmm?
Could it be yellow or pink too?
Right, but and I'm not suggesting
But
that
usually
that's
blue.
the only color, but usually when you think about sapphire, that blue stone seems to be the one that's most precious, or seemingly most precious. All of these things are just basic varieties of minerals and quartz. If you look at their foundation, I mean, it's derived from the earth itself and from sources in the earth. So that tells you something then. The creator who created the earth created these things, and the energy attached to it, as Pastor said, relates to the energies it received as it was created. So all of these things come from the earth. The spiritual meaning relates to that of it being a stone of wisdom and royalty, of prophecy, of divine favor. We're talking about sapphire now. Royalty, divine favor, prophecy. So what this is really telling us is partially who we are. And the stone, when we talk about the stone, we tend to see it as a separate kind of entity. But spiritually, if you integrate it with who we are, and if you see it from the spiritual perspective, they're foundations of who we are. If the New Jerusalem relates to being the city of righteousness, and we're the city of righteousness, that's what this is about. What's in you? And then the Bible talks about us being a royal priesthood, a holy nation, all of that stuff. This stone is just symbolic of that energy that's already been placed in us as well. So it's not just for that city Jerusalem that thing that's gonna come down from the sky one day, and that these are the foundations of that great city that's gonna come down from the sky one day. We are that great city, and these are foundational attitudes, attributes of who we are. In terms of symbolism, the sapphire represents wisdom and virtue and good fortune and holiness. The Hebrew meaning is beautiful. If you go beyond the Greek meaning back to the Hebrew meaning, that's what it means. It's a hard scratch resistant stone. That doesn't mean it can't be scratched, but it's scratch resistant in that it takes a lot. it's purportedly the second hardest natural stone used in jewelry, diamond being the first. So what does that tell you about you, based on what I just said? Scratch resistant, wisdom, virtue, good fortune, holiness, royalty. Tells you a lot about who you are. And so when we talk about, I mean, when I think about this, and I think about where I've grown from, and this, and I'm not even where I'm supposed to be yet in terms of growth. But when I used to say, well, I don't have any money, I'm, you know, blah, 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 and I tied everything to the natural, to what I can see, what I can put my finger on, what I can feel. And this has absolutely nothing to do with that. And in terms of being scratch resistant, how many of us, when we were living the life of more the human than the spiritual, how many of us let other people get under our skin, quote unquote, get under our skin? How many of us let what other people say or said get next to us, make us angry? How many of us are different today in terms of what we see on TV and our response? It's different from what it would have been years ago.
It is.
How many of us would have been in a rage years ago and just thought, woe is me, what's the world coming to? I guess we're not gonna make it, kind of thing. We're different now. And the energies of the stones just help us put that into perspective. We're scratch resistant.
I'm glad you said that, because before I got here, I went to the Shell station to get some coffee, and they weren't open, one of them. And I got kind of upset. Because they were changing shift, and I'm like, I need some coffee right now. So y'all open this door. But I had to calm myself down. I didn't realize.
And that
You
was
never know what will get you at that moment. But I'm serious. You think you up here, but something will let you know that, you know. And I had to calm myself down.
It'll remind you of the dregs in each of us that we just need to settle.
Yeah, just chill. Go to the next one.
Or make coffee before you leave home.
And don't run into the gas pump.
Well, this is kind of profound for me, because when you talk about foundations, you're talking about the underpinnings, what's holding you up.
Right.
And then to know that the jasper is strength and healing, and then the next one, sapphire, is holiness and prophecy and wisdom. Man, we got all that holding us up.
But we don't know it. It's like moving it. It's like having a building and not knowing the foundation of that building. You don't know if you're gonna, you know, without plans somewhere. You don't know if it will withstand another story being built on top of it.
Yeah.
Same principle.
Yeah, but when you got all that holding it up, you don't need to give in to anger and upsetness about petty little things.
Like that coffee.
Like my coffee. She said it so nicely. But that's what she wanted to tell me then.
See, you didn't know that before now.
Thank you, Audrey.
Miss Barbara, I have a question to ask. This thought came to my mind as we were talking about the stones being part of the earth, right? And a while back we talked about the Creator having retracted himself to make space for us. Is that the earth that he birthed out of that retraction?
Physicality.
Universe.
Yes.
So throughout the universe, these stone energies are everywhere then.
And these are mentioned here and they're found here, but you know, there are universes that we don't know anything about that have its own energy sources. I mean, there's some stone that was found that came from another universe, but it landed on the earth that they are only just now trying to peel back the properties of that stone. Just because we have stones associated to this physical ball or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't mean that that's the end all and be all. So my point is, if we don't know the foundation of what we have here, and then there's so much other stuff that have properties that we being bigger than the earth in terms of our consciousness, that it's probably infinite in terms of what we have access to, and until we become aware of it and begin to live in that, and I don't know how else to say that, be that. There's so much more that we won't know, and perhaps in the next life we will have a whole nother experience that we can continue to uncover and become more aware of who we are. Comments, questions? Again, and I'm just touching the surface here.
Have you gone through some of the stones already?
Talked about Jasper, and Jasper's a stone of healing and nurturing and wisdom and physical strength, energy. It's a stone of health and passion. It's a stone that gives us what we need to correct unjust situations. Yeah, it's a stone that's let's see what color it's from quartz. In the Hebrew it means jewel. The healing properties include it has a strong connection to the earth's energy, but healing properties are beneficial for grounding, stability, things like that, balance, things like that. And then we just talked about sapphire, which purportedly is the second strongest stone next to diamonds. Mostly blue in color, but there are other colors. But the blue sapphire is what people look for and what they see and what they value. And it's one of the 4 precious stones, the others being emerald, sapphire, diamond, ruby. One of the 4 precious stones that mankind is aware of. There are other 4 precious stones. There are many more precious stones out there. We just haven't come to the knowledge of them at this point. But anyway, and then the spiritual meaning of the sapphire we said was wisdom and royalty, prophecy, divine favor. So it's a scratch resistant metal. And we liken that to spiritual, what does that tell us about us? And we said that the stones are said to be the foundation of the New Jerusalem. Well, that New Jerusalem is us. And so this is what undergirds us spiritually. The stones are physical symbols of spiritual truths. And so then we said, if we look at ourselves a year ago and where we are now, our response to different things are different. What would have enraged us before doesn't. Now there are some things that do enrage us now, but they won't later. However late later is. Other questions? Let's see, I think I looked up about 8 or 9 of these. I haven't looked them all up yet. The next one is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Chalcedony. CHALCE.
Is this on?
It won't work. Let's put it this way. It's not worked yet. It's again, it's a quartz. We were talking about these stones come from the earth itself, and the earth was created by the Creator, and there are certain energies, certain resonances attached to everything, including stone. So this is a quartz.
The next one is what?
Pardon?
Which one are you doing?
CHALCEDO.
What's the
In
one
the-
we're looking for?
I don't know because this is the name that's used.
Okay.
Agate.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some other renditions, it is called something else. Remember, I tried to qualify on the front end, depending on the source.
In Exodus, they use that word too, agate.
Yeah. The third, agate.
I'm looking at some. The properties of
Depends on what version of the Bible you're looking
let me make a note on my agate. Agate.
What's this from the RSV? Agate.
And when we talk about the 12 tribes of Israel and the gems attached to them, yeah, the stone agate is what's the name agate is what's used. So that makes sense.
Yeah, the Chalcedonian, that's King James in Revelation. Yeah.
The healing properties of this stone are that it heals the eyes. It targets organs of the body, the gallbladder, the spleen, the blood, the circulatory system. It provides mental flexibility, verbal dexterity, the ability to learn new languages, and it improves memory. It promotes brotherhood and goodwill. Absorbs negative energy. It instills feelings of benevolence. That's a lot. Feelings of benevolence and generosity, this stone does. The energy of this stone. It alleviates hostility. It transforms melancholy into joy. So anyway, these are all properties, but again, these are all us. These stones represent characteristics of the New Jerusalem, the foundations of the New Jerusalem, foundations of our spiritual being. That's who you are. That's who I am. So that means that I can't use the excuses, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. Who do they think they are? Kinds of attitudes. I can't use that anymore. I am the New Jerusalem, and these are my foundation stones. These stones represent my foundation. So, Evelyn, it absorbs negative energy, and that's why that stuff has got to come out. You are an absorber of negative energy, and that's why it churns you sometimes, and it makes you feel like you got to cry. You got to, because there's that burden of that, and that's why when you do it, it's like the tears kind of help to purify that. So you don't know who else you're helping by what you do. You have no idea the impact that has on the physical earth. Yes.
if you look at it one way, is that it appears as though you raised the question, how can it possibly promote goodwill or benevolence when it absorbs negative energy? The answer to that, I suppose, would be that it absorbs it for the purpose of transforming it.
Well, if it's absorbed, wouldn't only goodwill and positive energy be left over?
If you absorb the negative energy, you're taking it out of the earth for that purpose. So there's a transformation taking place, a transference. You take the negative, you put out the positive. You see what I'm talking about?
And remember when we talked about when we talk about the body, there are certain of us that have uh, our strength. Our strengths may vary depending on who we are, but all of our strengths contribute to the whole. So, and just one more side, right quick. If you look back, that jasper we refer to could probably be the diamond that we're talking about, because remember, sapphire came after jasper, and I believe jasper is called diamond in the context of some of the other scriptures. So let me make myself a note because I need to go back and verify. Questions about agate? Chalcedony. Alleviates hostility. Next, we'll talk about then fourth one. So we've talked about jasper or diamonds, sapphires. We've talked about agate, emeralds. Let's talk about emeralds. They come in a variety of colors. The one that you usually think about is green, like the Emerald Seas, the ship.
Oh, yeah.
The one you think about usually is green, but they come in a variety of colors. The spiritual meaning of this stone is, some say it's, for lack of a better, successful love. Now you're going to ask me later what successful love is. And I'm going to ask you what you think it is. It opens and nurtures the heart. And it talks about even the heart chakra. It opens and nurtures the heart. Tie that to love as we talk. It's soothing energy and it provides healing to all levels of our being. What does love do? When you exude love, it's like everything is in balance. I mean, you can even take the physical love, and when you feel, if you ever felt that feeling, it's like, oh man, this is so nice. It's almost, the verse in the Bible says God is love. Who you are is love.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are is love. That's part of your being. So it's a soothing energy. It's it brings freshness, and it brings vitality to your spirit being. Freshness and vitality. It's a stone of inspiration and infinite patience. We talk about love, when I talked about success, they refer to it as successful love. Infinite patience. So whatever happens, if you are grounded in that attribute, you can always balance yourself. You can choose to bring yourself back into balance, just based on love. So another way to say what is successful love is always being able to balance yourself so that you see mankind in love, regardless of all the hate that's spewing, all of the isms that we talk about. You can overlay love on top of that because you see beyond the isms and the schisms. You are Yahweh. You are a spirit being, and this is in your foundation. Stone of inspiration, infinite patience. It embodies unity. It embodies compassion. It embodies unconditional love. So what is successful love? Just throw the word successful away. Love is unconditional. Regardless of what I do or say, you are to love me.
Well, love is love. Why would you have to put successful on it?
That's why I said throw it away.
Okay.
Because we all use the word love, but unless you understand it spiritually, I love you if you love me. Otherwise,
Yeah.
or I love you if you do what I want you to do.
Could it be that the reason the word successful used in the first place is because what we call love doesn't exist? It is unsuccessful. It doesn't accomplish the goal. If it's unsuccessful, it means that I love you with the love of Jesus. It's not the love that the scriptures is talking about, and it does not accomplish the goals that gives you infinite patience.
It's almost like it's an unripeness, just like
Yeah,
the word
right.
love.
Oh.
That kind of thing. That's what I thought about the moment she said, successful love. That automatically my mind goes to, if it's successful, what's unsuccessful?
Mm.
Yeah.
I thought about unrequited love, but I don't think that fits.
No, unrequited love implies you giving something, you're not getting anything back.
Right.
This love is you give it whether you get anything back or not.
Because there's no expectation.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's always productive.
It's
It
always.
is.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I guess unrequited love is not fruitful. But I mean, the type of love we're talking about always finds completion. It always produces something.
See, the scriptures, the Hebrew and Aramaic, truly only talks about, there's only one love. So when you talk about unrequited love, that's not the love of the scriptures anyway.
Not really.
When we talk about eros, when we talk about agape, those are Greek terms for different types of love. But there's only one type of love in the scriptures, and that love is just love itself. That's who you are. There are different manifestations of it. The way it's manifested towards you from me will be different than it's manifested towards Clark to me, or Phoebe to me, or Audrey to me, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's different expressions of it, but it's still the same love. And there are people who argue it's not, but my retort to that is this. You love your children different than you love your spouse, but it's still love, right? So it's simply different expressions of it. It's not totally different, like compartments. Because when you compartmentalize something, you put walls between it. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it reminds me of what happens when light hits a prism and you see the different colors. I mean, they're not separate.
The source is still the same,
The
isn't it?
source is still the same.
Yeah.
It's still one beam of light, but you can, I guess I don't have the scientific
Refracted.
yeah, but when the light is refracted or whatever and it hits that surface,
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
see the components.
And what we have done, you who are not New Jerusalem, what we've done is we've put our own take on this part of the light that's refracted after it goes through the prism. This is mine. This is mine. And I put my box around it in terms of definitions,
Yeah.
etc. And that's what different people and they are able to see that it's all the same source. It all has its value. It's all for a reason, and it's not for me to just hog my piece of it, if you will. That's what emeralds do. Emeralds sort of represent, the stone represents unconditional love, unity. It promotes friendship. It promotes it keeps partnerships in balance. It because all of it is based on love. Everything is balanced. It that's basically it. It encourages growth, reflection, peace, again balance. When 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 you come from the aspect of just love in general, it takes a lot to get you off center. It takes a lot to, and then if you get off center, you can quickly restore your, get centered again. Something might blindside you, but it doesn't cause you to ultimately lose your focus and get off track. You can right yourself in terms of whatever that is that blindsided you. You can, it allows you to balance yourself again. It doesn't distract you from the essence of who you are.
You were saying each stone has not just one color, right? So my thing is, so if I were to look at a stone, it will give me or show me the color that I need in order to become balanced.
You know, there's some stones, and physically, there's some stones that can change color. Yes, and for me, it just like my mood lipstick. I mean, nothing changes color depending on that kind of principle. But there are some stones that literally can do that. So yes,
Yeah.
yes, like this stone it can be yellow. It can be. I mean, it's. But the symbolism of the stone is that whatever you need,
Right.
when you need it, you have access to it.
Regardless of what your mood is at the moment.
It's to give you balance. Where I think it's wherever you unbalance.
Well, when you look at a balanced relationship, it's, to me, it's like I do what my objective is to balance you by virtue of doing what's good for you, and you do the same for me. That's balance, which means that I may be presenting something to you that I don't need, and as opposed to me making you be what I want you to be, I recognize who you are and strengthen that. You see what I'm struggling with here? Balance is not agreement.
No.
Balance is not two things that looks alike or act alike. It's balance to me is something similar, but not to it necessarily similar to consensus. Or I do everything for you, you do everything for me. 50-50, 60-40, 90-10, whatever it needs to be. Because in some areas you are the same. You see things the same way. But in most areas people don't.
And that's why I asked, the stones can be different colors. And at that time, it will give me what I need in order to strengthen me.
And this is what I'm missing.
The symbol, the symbol of what that stone means can do that.
It doesn't give you what you need. You're already it.
Okay.
What you, when you embrace it, it bubbles to the top. No one have to tell me I need to be rebalanced. You know, even though sometimes I'm told,
Mhm.
but eventually I'm gonna see it.
Mhm.
So why do I see that? Because that's who I am. You see, so it's not like I'm gonna look at this yellow stone and it gonna give me what I need because it's yellow. Every aspect of it is your makeup. All of us are made up of the same thing. However, we have an affinity for different things.
Mhm.
You could be a thief just as easy
Yeah,
as you could
I mean-
be generous. It's just what you have an affinity for.
Or could the colors be representative of different personalities, but it's
Absolutely.
still the same underpinning?
Yeah, absolutely the same underpinning. And that's what I was talking about, I said, without regard to the mood that you may be in, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, you, New Jerusalem, this is part of your foundation. Woman of righteousness.
I mean, think about this. This is not even a wall. This is a foundation.
Now let's go on and talk about onyx. Onyx. Onyx is usually thought of as a blackish stone. It can be white though, depending on where you get it from. But onyx is usually thought of as black, and it's similar to an agate type stone. Spiritually, if you look beyond that, it's powerful protection that absorbs and transforms negative energy. It helps to prevent the drain of personal energy. It aids the development of emotional and physical strength and stamina, especially when support is needed during when you're stressed out, or when you're confused, or when there's grief. And when I thought about onyx, I thought about physically blacks as a race of people, and what we've endured. But then when I look at what the spiritual underpinning of onyx is, it helps me see how we endured.
Mhm.
Again, it absorbs and transforms negative energy without draining your own personal energy. He's so funny. It aids the development of emotional and physical strength and stamina, especially when it's needed during, those periods that seem so intense for us when you're grieving, or when you're stressed out about something, or when you're what's the guy who's the babysitter, and he was stopped for being black while babysitting.
Oh,
Well, when we are as a race are just persecuted for just being black.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things can really stress you out. But we had that opportunity to rebalance.
To put it lightly.
Yeah. Any questions about onyx? Any thoughts about that?
Read that last part again about emotional development.
What I said was that it aids the development of emotional and physical strength and stamina, especially when we need that support during times of adversity, times of stress, times of grief, things like that. Times of confusion.
That's,
So, go.
that speaks to what you said about, the sodium in the body, retaining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The retention of the sodium.
Mhm.
I got what I needed for whatever the stressful,
Right.
whatever stress was placed on my, we were talking about the slaves on the ships, and, when I was telling, you all about the physician
Yeah.
who talked
yeah.
about, how the slaves who survived, um, survived because they retained salt. And what the salt does is it holds the fluid in your body. And so for those people who were vomiting and who had diarrhea, you know, you lose salt and you lose minerals the more you do that. But this is something that happened to help them survive. And so,
And that's the God nature. That's Elohim changing or recreating the body in such a way that it can survive the torture. It's like the body was a built-in mechanism that was triggered.
mhm.
And the question I raise about that now, since I look at this, was it consciously triggered?
By the individual, you mean?
Yes. Because when I think about how I was reading it some time ago, the history of Jamestown, and the way that medicine was introduced to the country that enslaved people, the men who were taken from villages, and sometimes females, who were quote unquote witch doctors, and that has a totally different definition of what they give it. But anyway, they would heal people with the herbs. And the question was, how did they know what herbs they were, since someone was indigenous to this country? However, they had to take a white person with them, and he was called a doctor. And when the white person learned, then the enslaved person was put back on the plantation, and the white dude became the doctor. So that's why I raised the question: was it consciously triggered? It's something that they had, learned over time, especially the what is it, is it Bodine? The desert dwellers?
Bedouins.
Bedouins, the Bedouins, what they had learned, that how they traveled the desert without losing fluid. So is it something that you trigger purposely or consciously? And I kind of sort of lean into it, yes, that is something that you've learned.
Or is it tied to the will? The will is, I will not die. I will not.
This is not going to break me.
Yes.
Yes. I
What
suppose.
and I guess the will can be conscious, and also, a lot of these people
That
have a
makes sense.
spiritual underpinning
Yeah, right.
from where they came from. It may not be the way we,
Matter of fact, it's more sophisticated
yeah,
than ours.
yeah, it's not the way we describe the spiritual, but
That makes sense, because the will becomes the trigger. I will this body to live, and that triggers whatever it takes to make it live. So, that makes sense.
it's not unlike instances of being healed from things like cancer and things like that,
Right.
when everything else has failed. And someone said that, I had my children to take care. I couldn't die. It was,
Heard that so many times.
anyway, the onyx represents, if you took this aspect of this attitude or this attribute away, you know, the other stones have some degree of healing, blah blah blah. But again, each stone, if you think about the symbolism of what they represent, each brings something to the table, if you will, something invaluable to the spiritual psyche, and I don't mean that way, but to the being. That's important for the being, the spiritual being, the spiritual entity. For me, the spirit of me, not physical, but the spirit. New Jerusalem, do you understand what your foundation is? And how it's prepped us to be who we were meant to be, who we are. Meant to be because we hadn't been aware of it or uncovered it. But once it's uncovered, it's who we are. Once we know it, it's who we are all along. But if we didn't know it, it's like the mailbox, and there's a letter in there. Until you open the mailbox and get the letter, it stays in the mailbox. That doesn't mean it's not in the mailbox.
Or the check in the mailbox.
Or the what?
The check is in the mailbox.
Expecting.
And you know, you can't use it till you open the mailbox and get it.
Right.
Checks in the
Not money yet. Yep, not money till you.
Now, this next stone, I don't know, let me see. Carnelian, carnelian. I want to see if it's a,
What is that? Is that that's a six stone? That has sardis.
S-A-R-D-I-U-S is what, it's also called sardis.
Spell it right. I mean, RGCA. I'm looking at the color of it.
Yeah, sardis in the King James Version.
Oh.
It was worn by ancient warriors for courage and power. It's commonly used as semi-precious stone, and the color can vary. Again, it can be a pale orange to an intense, almost blackish stone. So it's a range. The properties include, the healing properties include restoration of vitality and motivation. There's creativity, which is stimulated by the stone. It gives courage. It promotes positive life choices. Dispels apathy. Motivates you for success.
And that's the color of the sacral chakra as well. That orange.
The second.
Yeah.
Which chakra?
Sacral.
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 Oh,
chakra.
okay. Sacral.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's pretty cool.
It's a stone for overcoming your fear of talking in front of people. And again, you know, we're talking about the stones, but the stones are just symbolic of the spiritual energy is what we're talking about.
Right.
Of what they actually mean is what we're talking about.
Does the
Okay.
I was gonna say, does the number, as it is in the written, does it have anything to do with, like, 1 was jasper, 2 was sapphire?
Well, I'm not quite so sure of that at this point, because they're listed this way in terms of the foundation. But if you look at the 12 stones in the breastplate, they're a slightly different order. If you look at the stones of the 12 tribes, and then the breastplate of the priest, the arrangement is slightly different.
I think it's not the numbers as much as it is what they represent, the stones,
Mhm.
and the number, so you can see how many there are more or less,
I got you.
as opposed to that.
Okay.
The people who sell crystals, sell these stones,
Mhm.
have missed it, because I don't believe that the stones have the power. I believe that they're a reminder of who we are, of the power,
Right.
if it makes sense.
It does.
And the only way that it can have any energy of its own, it has to come from a life source.
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, then why would you sell me a $25 onyx, which is small, and a $250 onyx, which is 3 times as large as that? The small one should carry the same characteristics
Right.
as the larger one, you know? So by virtue of doing that, what you have done is put a wall around, a wall of unconscious greed around the attributes that you were made from. So now you can't use them, you can't access them because you're looking for them in the wrong place.
That
Does that
means
make
that little diamond on your finger there, you thought, well, where is it?
Yeah.
The value is not in the physical.
Thanks to the beers, right?
Yeah. You're talking about, a small onyx versus a large onyx. And my next logical thought is the larger onyx will be more powerful or hold more of the energy or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? I suspect that's wrong,
Yeah.
but I want to hear why
Yeah.
out loud.
Okay. If that were the case, right, then a large onyx would overpower me. If a small one helps me, the larger one would overpower. It would be to the point where it could become destructive as opposed to helpful. So, because if the energy increases with the size of it, as opposed to just embodying the same thing, same energy, it could be just as destructive as it could helpful. So it's really an opportunity for someone to make some money. I mean, I've been dealing with stones since I was in college, watching people, vendors with the stones, and it never made sense to me. Now I understand the reason it didn't make sense, that you have a $25 stone, $50 stone, and both of them the same stone. That never made sense to me, because if that were the case, then Barbara's diamond would be more representative of what the person felt for her based upon how large it is.
You see my diamond, right?
You see? But not existent, right? But you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So I don't. It's like everything else in this earth. Everything in this earth has energy. Everything does. And that energy is for the purpose of stability, reproduction, friendships, etc. So to move from the idea that it's a reminder and expect the power to come from it is to miss the whole message that they had when it was on the ephod of the priest. The ephod of the priest was simply that when the stones lit up, they were telling a story based upon which ones lit up on the ephod, right? They were telling a story, and the only one who could interpret the story that they were telling was the priest at that time. So now we're looking at the story that they were telling. And the story that they were telling is, this is what when you're righteous, this is who you are. This is the personality of righteousness. These are foundational. If you can't get these, you can't go beyond where you are.
I feel we about to tap into something, cause every time Barbara teaches starts something, there's something
She
about,
birthed something.
huh?
She birthed something.
She does.
Yeah.
And I think we trying to get to the entree before we do the appetizer, cause we know it's something.
Well, this is what I see. I see we have the things that were taught from 2021 to 13 of Revelations
Mhm.
were the appetizers. We are at the place where we're beginning to put the entree on the plate.
Okay.
You know, this foundational mean basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if this is basic, where have we been?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You
'Cause
know?
we want it.
Yeah.
It's like,
And that's the only reason you're seeing it.
yeah.
Because there's a deep desire for it beyond trying to sell somebody on onyx.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
I think part of what it's showing us is what you said the other week or two, that Revelation is about revealing who we are, and it's not about that New Jerusalem that's going to come down. It's revealing the New Jerusalem, the righteousness that we are now, and that we've got all of, and this is just simply talking about, okay, what's righteous, what underpins righteousness? What do you have access to as a righteous being? And this is what we have access to. This is foundationally what we have access to.
And we say that, Bob. We say dig deep in yourself and find the love that you need to show to someone. You know, we talk about stuff like that. Find compassion within yourself. We talk about so-and-so has no heart because they have no empathy. They have no compassion. We don't.
Mm.
So I think we subconsciously are aware of a lot of this, but it simply has to be rebirth. Jesus says, return to the beginning, and that's what we did. Now we're walking towards the place where we were intended to be from the beginning.
I think the thing that did it for me was Jerusalem is not out there.
Right.
Jerusalem is not a location.
Yeah.
Jerusalem is not coming down. That I am righteousness. I think that's the thing that did it for me, which sort of brought it from the physical into the spiritual. That I can't, it's nothing I can touch with my physical finger. It's what I know with my spiritual eye, if that resonates. I don't have to touch it with my physical finger. This is not usually a lesson that we do, is it? But it's got some meat in it. Let's see. We have time for one or two more.
Golly.
Yeah.
The time is flown.
Mm-hmm. The next one, then. Any other thoughts about Carnelian or what called
Chalcedon.
Sardius?
Oh, sorry. I'm behind.
Hmm?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That stone sounds like blood to me.
Which one? This one?
Carnelian, because of maybe the coloring and some of its attributes.
It can range from that pale orange to that almost blackish type color. So that's the range. So yeah, it can be red as well.
Could you repeat the attributes again? Just the overview.
It's a brownish red mineral, and that's where that reddish tone can come out. But the attributes, it restores your motivation. It restores vitality. It stabilizes and stores. It not only restores, but it stabilizes and restores. Or restores and stabilizes. It stimulates creativity, gives courage, promotes positive life choices, dispels apathy, motivates for success. So it motivates you. It's an attribute of motivation and endurance.
You still the same one?
Leadership and courage.
Can these stones be mapped onto the tree of life?
I'm not sure because I think all of these are in the tree of life. I mean, all of these are. See, I don't know that they can be mapped in the section that's tied to Earth
I see.
as much as being mapped to the upper realm, because it takes really knowing who you are to appreciate this attribute about yourself. When it's mapped to the lower realm, we tend to think physically about it. And we tend to think about that, yeah, if I get the stone and I hold it over my heart because it's supposed to be good for my heart, that it'll take care. And we never understand that it's not the stone. I mean, so, yeah, it can be mapped to the tree of life, but in the lower realms, we tend to map it more physically, which is not where we want to be. I don't know if that resonates or not, but.
It does. I was just thinking about chakras and astrological signs
Yeah.
and the
There are
stones
some
we're
attributes
discussing.
too.
And they're almost like different lenses for observing the energies
The,
that make us up.
it's a different way of saying the same thing, depending on the culture.
I guess like is it paradigm?
Yes, it's a different, yes, but it's a different paradigm, but it leads to the same place.
I feel like I may have seen charts in books that will line some of this stuff up and will say this chakra, this stone,
Yeah,
this.
Leo and
sign.
Virgo are tied to this if you're talking about the sun constellations, but
that's what I was getting ready to say. Look at the tribes. That gives you the astrological chart. The stone that's connected to the tribe is the one that's connected to the astrological chart. You see? That's what I say.
and like I said, this is just surface, guys. I mean, you're right. There's so many layers to this.
Yeah, just thinking about it, kind of like, ooh, it's really, it's a lot.
Well, I'm looking at condensing like major attributes of each. When you look at it, some of them are repetitious attributes. You don't need to mention that except one time. The first one, stability. All the rest of it is there, but like endurance. However, if you don't have stability, you can get none of the rest of this.
Right.
So stability would be the main attribute out of all of those that are available. So if I were to condense it, I would say Jasper, attribute of Jasper, stability and strength. Then I go to the next one, Sapphire, and I would say holiness, prophecy, and wisdom. That's it. That, to condense it. Now that's for my purposes of being able to replicate what Barbara is teaching for other people that I may have to teach too. Right? like that?
It's not because I like you, it's just that I'm thinking, that's all.
It's nice to know you can do that.
Yeah. But it's not, I'm just taking in what you're saying because it's so,
I mean, that's what I'm doing.
it's awesome.
I'm writing it, all this stuff, but it's for that purpose.
Okay.
I'm not like your sister, want a type version of it.
That's what he's talking about.
He talking about Roger. He throwing shade.
That's exceptionally.
Oh, wow.
All right. Righteous women over there. Balance yourself in here.
Cause we balanced. We balanced.
Okay.
This is worth going home to study for. It really is. Y'all gonna make me start back reading the Bible.
Yeah, but you're reading it from a different perspective.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, yeah. Ooh.
Okie dokie, then. How many are there? We've done six.
Six. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Chrysolite. Some other places it may be called peridot.
Okay.
Goldstone, a yellowish green
Yeah.
gem. It's very ancient, and it was found in Egyptian jewelry from the early second millennium BC. So it's been in jewelry for thousands and thousands of years. Increases self-esteem.
See.
Yeah, it's symbolic of letting go of guilt that may be that maybe you feel from having made some mistakes in the past. Whatever that guilt is symbolic of your of it's an attribute that symbolic of your being able to let it go. And then in terms of letting go, then it's symbolic of gaining confidence. I mean, because you don't wrap yourself in so much guilt, and you're more confident, you're able to appreciate the beauty around you. When you keep that guilt, it's sort of like you imprison yourself in your own world, and you can't see beyond what the guilt shows you about yourself. But once you let go of that guilt, it's like opening the eyes. It's like being in a prison, and with no windows. That's what guilt does to us. It helps us stay centered on the badness, or what we call bad, or the thing that was bad. That's what guilt does to us. And when we let that go, and we understand that, I think you said one time, Pastor, it struck me that a righteous person, what did you say? A righteous person
Can do no wrong.
can do no wrong. A righteous person can do no wrong. And that's what this reminded me of. When you let go of the guilt, whatever that guilt is, and forget it, it's done. It allows you to apprehend so much more. That's what this stone represents in terms of attributes. It's a freeing kind of thing. Questions? Comments? Nope. No questions? Okay. Number 8, beryl. this includes a gamut of colors from emerald to aquamarine to aquamarine to it's a yellowish greenish in tone. It's very tough. It's a very tough metal. It's sometimes used to strengthen other metals. Um, the deepest green is related to the color emerald. It's said to have the power to keep demons away, to promote happiness.
Which one is this one?
This
probably
is
the eighth
beryl.
one?
Beryl. Mm-hmm. Cure laziness.
Promotes,
It cures laziness?
Yeah.
Oh,
it promotes what happens.
Somebody
Promotes
give me a bad
happiness. Promotes happiness and marital laws. Increase sincerity, cure laziness, protect. It was said to protect travelers from dangers, maintain youthfulness.
well, laziness is definitely not a feature of youthfulness.
I tell you, lazy so slow,
Interesting.
poverty always catch up with.
It's really colorless in its purest form. Colorless
Wow.
in its purest form. But the impurities in it is what gives us this color. What does that sound like? It's the it's the experiences that we've had in our life, and they have not all been good.
Do the attributes again?
Attributes such as laziness, I like,
Yeah.
but attributes such as it's a strong metal and it's also used to make other metals stronger. What is it makes us stronger? It's all the life experiences that we have, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And when we don't attach guilt to them and let them go, they can strengthen us even more. Happiness promotes happiness, keeps demons away. It increases sincerity, maintains youthfulness, protect travelers from danger. Blah blah blah.
And this stone is used in metals?
It can be used. The attribute is used to strengthen other metals. Yes, it can be used to strengthen other metals.
You said other metals, it makes me think that it is
Other
a metal
metals
too?
or other
Yes.
stones?
Well, it's called a metal as well as a stone. There's some metals that are that are stones. So it's called
Oh yeah, it's composed of.
yes. It's
Yes.
based on what it's made of.
aluminum, too.
When it says power to keep demons away. What I'm thinking of is I want to make sure that people listening know that we're not talking about external beings.
Mhm.
It's talking about deceptive thoughts.
Beryl teaches you how to do only that which you need to do in that time and place. Sound familiar?
Yes.
It gives you a word. It gives you a thought. It gives you what you need for that particular time and space. And again, it helps you deal with the stressful kinds of things that life brings. It's the ability to shed unwanted emotional baggage.
Mm. What color was that? What's the color? You said
It's basically colorless in its
Colorless.
purest form, but it's the impurities that help to make it up that gives it its varied colors. And so the beauty of it is that you can see the different colors, like the prism, like the rainbow, based on its impurities. And the point I was making is it's those experiences in our lives that have made us
who we are.
the people that we are, the persons, the spiritual beings that we are. And I kind of like this stone because it acknowledges that.
For sure.
Yeah, that.
It seems like a really purposeful ability. I mean, if we're talking about a life form, for lack of a better way for me to put it, that evolves through adversity,
Uh-huh.
being able to shed unwanted emotional baggage is really
Exactly.
helpful.
Go get me one.
It
Put 'em
looks
on your
like-
jaw.
It looks like there's a progression with the stones. It appears as though there's a progression with them. A progression towards the likeness of Elohim.
Mhm.
That's what it appears there.
There's more.
Okay.
With Burrell?
It helps you realize your potential. As a crystal, the stone opens and activates the crown chakra.
Oh, wow.
It enhances courage, relieves stress, calms the mind. Its ability to filter out distractions and reduce overstimulation encourages a positive view. In other words, it helps you weed out the distractions so that the view, your focus, remains on what you want it to be on. I think that's the most about peril. Comments?
Out of all the ones you mentioned so far, that one
Resonates.
resonates with me.
Not the diamond?
Nah.
Not the diamond that ward off demons.
I want the one that wards off. I want the attribute that wards off demons. But your
That-
point is well taken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one
it is.
resonates with
Because
me.
physically, what's more valuable? The diamond. We're not talking about physical. So yeah.
Yeah, that one resonates with me so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you saying that?
I see a progression from the spiritual to the natural.
Okay,
Things that we need to, distractions that keep us in the natural.
right.
The previous one is self-esteem. You know,
Yeah.
and I see a progression from the other world to this world.
Mm.
That's a balance between the two.
We can get a copy from Pastor. He writing all this down.
Sparsely.
No, I'm gonna look it up too. Wow.
Okay. Where are we?
Verbal.
Four more next week.
Oh,
I have to come next week. Yeah.
no, I won't go. But you know what? My thought is, I see why people flock to Africa. Cause does Africa not have all these there?
So it's a lot of stuff that comes out of Africa. There's
Every
some stones that
million-
are all from other parts of the earth too.
Well, these are all over the Middle East.
Yeah, every metal in the world is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just,
This also points me to melanin. Melanin is found in asteroids and comets. Melanin is found, there's life in what we call outer space or the universe itself. And the higher the concentration of melanin, they've actually tied it to intellect and creativity. So, and there's intellect, creativity, and endurance. And without forgiveness, there is no endurance. So I think those are one and the same.
And when I think about that physically, who else can create sausages from the innards of a hog, or make chicken feet to taste so good, and the dregs.
Yeah. And uh, the thing that got me was chitlins. When the masters of the enslaved tasted chitlins, they increased in price. And now we don't even want. Yeah. I mean, seriously.
We can make a steel
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. And that's what
That's
still is.
creativity,
A
that's,
little bit of everything.
Yeah.
See, if they gentrify collard greens, I'll be
Mhm.
upset. They're working on it.
Yeah.
We got kale, which costs more than it should.
Yeah. But though, that's what the stuff that the creativity that I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
I don't see anything that's being used today that did not come from the mind of those out of the East. They may have been improved upon, but the original did not. It came from the mind of the East, whether it be a ship or a wheel or a mailbox, for that matter.
Mm.
So
okay. All right, let's do the next 4 next week.
I think that's enough to marinate.
Yeah.
This is a lot.
It is.
Okay.
If all of this thing is the foundation, what are the gates? The gate of pearl. The one, you know what gates I'm talking about? The one where Peter got the key on his waist.
That's what I always wondered about the gates of pearl,
Yeah.
because with Jewish people, pearl is like anathema. They don't
Yeah.
want to have nothing to do with it.
And I think it's an anathema because Jewish people are not Semites. When you look at a pearl,
Well, but it comes from the bottom feeding.
yes, that's what I'm talking
or
about.
whatever that
But
is. But
think about who the Jews are.
yeah,
When you look at, I'm talking about today.
yeah.
When you look at a pearl, it comes from irritation. It comes from pressure. It's a result of something that was an irritant, and now it has become something valuable, something pretty much almost as hard as a diamond.
That should be our favorite Jew.
And so,
Kind of is.
On the whole.
Okay.
Not for the right reasons.
Think on those things. Come back with your comments. If you do some other study and it's something that's going to be beneficial to all of us, let us hear you next week. Thank you for your attentiveness today.
you had us spellbound.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. This is, honestly, I think what happens when we get where we are, it appears to be more